Good morning, John Q. This is the United States of Amnesia, broadcasting today as every day from somewhere between memory and forgetfulness. Today's headline: Israel, to be or not to be. Yesterday we looked through Persian eyes. Yesterday we asked what happens when an ancient civilization begins remembering its glory, when the phoenix rises, when memory becomes ambition. Today we look through different eyes, my eyes, shaped by a very different memory. For me, it began in 1948. I was sitting at a kitchen table in California with my father, listening to a radio as the United Nations voted on whether a Jewish homeland would become a nation. My father sat with a pencil in his hand, marking each vote as it was announced, one by one. Yes, no, yes, no. The numbers climbed. Then came the final uncertainty. China. China abstained, and Israel was born. I remember looking at my father. There was no celebration, no shouting, no cheering, just a single tear. The only tear I ever saw him shed. At the time, I didn't understand. In truth, I spent much of my life misunderstanding my father. He never spoke about Romania. He never spoke about the war. He never spoke about what had happened to his family. And because he never spoke about it, I filled in the silence myself. My father never served in World War II. He had a family and remained in America while others fought. I chose a military career, and if I'm honest, somewhere deep inside me, I carried the suspicion that perhaps my father had simply avoided his duty. Then he died. In the bathroom of our home, holding the ticket I had bought him to return to Romania. The first opportunity he would have had since he was a boy. So I went in his place. And there, for the first time, I learned who my father really was, who my family really were. I learned about the 12-year-old boy hidden beneath the floorboards while soldiers searched the house. I learned how his mother tried to draw their attention away from his hiding place before they bayoneted her, killed her. And when my father finally emerged from beneath the floor, he found his mother dead and his 33-year-old father sitting against the wall, shattered by grief. My grandfather never truly recovered. From that day on, he barely spoke, he barely ate, and not long afterward, he died of a broken heart. At 12 years old, my father became the head of the family, a child making decisions no child should ever have to make. Dividing brothers and sisters among relatives, sending some to orphanages, trying to keep everyone alive. And then I learned what became of them. One brother would later be machine-gunned and thrown into a mass grave with thousands of others. He survived, he crawled out, and eventually rose to become the vice president of the Communist Party of Romania. Another, a gifted artist, was sent to a concentration camp where doctors experimented on him, deliberately crippling one side of his body so he could never draw again. He survived too. He taught himself to draw with the other hand and eventually became his country's ambassador to Brussels. And as I learned something else about my father himself, the man I had quietly judged all those years had not spent the war hiding from it. From Germany, he helped move Jews out of Europe and into safety, While others fought with rifles, he fought with forged papers, secret routes, courage, and silence. The man I thought I knew turned out to be one of the bravest men I have ever known. And suddenly that year in 1948 made sense, because Israel was never merely a nation to him. It was a refuge. It was an answer. It was a promise. Never again. Those two words have shaped every Israeli calculation since, and they will shape every Israeli calculation in the future. Never again. Never again will Jews wait for others to save them. Never again will they place their survival in the hands of promises, treaties, resolutions, or the goodwill of nations. Never again. And that is where we must begin if we are to understand Israel today. Because nations do not act out of strategy. They act from memory. And no nation on earth is more shaped by memory than Israel. Tomorrow we will ask the question that follows. What happens when one civilization remembers empire and the other remembers annihilation? What happens when Persia remembers the throne and Israel remembers the mass graves? A word to the wise. Truth is virtue, amnesia is sin. Remember.